Hi, my name is Himanshu Saxena. I'm the founder and CEO of Center of Strategic Mindset. My mission is to groom strategic minds who can deliver bold impact. For every river, there is an upstream and there is a downstream. Upstream is the source of origination, usually in glaciers, and downstream is the place where river merges into ocean to dissolve its richness for greater good. Like rivers, I too have my upstream that includes my personal experiences, experiments in life, and most importantly, the conversations with the leaders from where I draw my ideas, perspectives, stories, and learnings. I do have my downstream in the form of insights that I strive to spread and share with a larger, broader audience for their growth and relevance. One significant source of insights for me is the conversations with leaders who have already undertaken a path-breaking journey. They turn around things, they champion change, led operations at scale, they spawn a league of leaders for sustained growth, and most importantly, they left a legacy to inspire generations. I call these leaders as legends. Legends because, like the metaphorical pebble thrown in a pond, their influence is far beyond their personal reach. And if we think of one common denominator, I think they all inspired millions of people for personal change and sacrifice. It is this aspect of learning which inspired me to conceive this series called The Journey of Legends, where I invite legendary leaders to share their journey and give us a glimpse of their life and what they changed positively and irreversibly. Our legend today is someone who's truly inspirational, transformational, and humble to the core, and a real visionary. He's someone who turned around not one, but two large global corporations, and that too from a point where it was not only challenging, but also precarious. He's been recognized for his contributions, industry leadership, and service, including being the number 3 on Fortune's World's Greatest Leaders. He's one of the 30 world's best CEOs by Barron Magazine. One of the world's most influential people by none other than Time Magazine. Chief Executive of the Year by Chief Executive Magazine. He's the leader of Future by Frances Hesselbein Leadership Institute in 2006. And the list goes on, guys. He's a Museum of Flight Pathfinder and a member of Automobile Hall of Fame. He was also honored with the Automotive Executive of the Year and the Thomas Edison Achievement Award. Can you imagine the impact this person would have created? He previously served on President Obama's United States Export Council. He served as co-chairman of the Washington Competitiveness Council. He was the president of American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and as the chairman of the board of governors of the Aerospace Industries Association. No more surprises, guys. Yes, he's one and only Alan Roger Mulally, the former president and chief executive officer of the Ford Motor Company. He retired from Ford Motor Company on July 1st, 2014. Prior to joining Ford, Alan served as president and chief executive officer of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, in addition to being the executive vice president of the Boeing Company. Alan's achievements at Ford are chronicled in a book called The American Icon. This is the book, and I had the privilege of receiving a copy from Alan himself. Ford had been struggling during the late 2000 recession. It returned to profitability under Alan Mulally and was the only American major car manufacturer to avoid a bailout fund provided by the government. Alan currently serves on the board of directors of Alphabet, the holding company of Google, the Mayo Clinic, and the Carbon CD. Alan, welcome to the Journey of Legends. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on this episode of The Journey of Legends.
Well, good morning and good afternoon to you.
Thank you. What a pleasant surprise and really delightful for your time that you're going to spend. This message is going to inspire thousands and hundreds of leaders.
Well, it's great to join you. I always love it when I hear someone say that I was the third best leader in the world, and I want you to know, Himanshu, that I'm okay with that because at that time the Pope was number one. So I'm still trying to get to heaven like the rest of us.
Sometimes it's always good to be one behind one and two, because that keeps you going. And it's always very exciting. So let's begin with a very simple question. Where did this legendary journey begin for you, Alan?
Well, first of all, I really like your approach of describing a journey, because like all of us, it really is a journey. And one neat thing I've learned is to continue to reflect on that journey and the progress on the journey, both about who you are and why you are who you are and what you do and how you do it. So I think it's really neat the way you're framing your work in this area. So my journey really started when I was born in Oakland, California, in the United States, but we moved very soon to Lawrence, Kansas, which is where my mother had grown up in the Midwest. And my dad was going back and forth supporting the Army in World War II. And so he had grown up in New York City. And so moving to the Midwest was a big change for him and very exciting for him. And my parents were wonderful, but we had very little means, and we had a lot of love. And I have three sisters, and our parents absolutely believed in us and facilitated learning and teaching and encouragement. And it always started with humility, love, and service. To your point, is that we were here. We have an opportunity to continually grow, and we have an opportunity to serve all the people that we're in contact with, and also, to your point, the greater good. And so that's where I started. And you can imagine that with that kind of support, even though we had very little means, it led me to service and work the way people describe work, but also to me, that work was my love made visible, because that's what I loved doing, was serving. So that was the formation of me very early on.
That's a great programming. And, Marshall's work on identity, where he talks about remembered identity, reflected identity, and programmed identity. I think you got a great programming of humility, learning, and service. So kudos to your parents. And that's a wonderful program to ever have undergone. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us something about your childhood, early experiences, how you viewed the world, and how the world viewed you at that point of time in life when you were young.
This is really neat question. And I like the way you described the programming and the way I learned. And I jotted down some of the things that I've learned from my parents, which shaped, again, reflecting, has really shaped my life. And so these are some things they taught me. And what would happen, Himanshu, is that every morning, one of my parents would say these things to me as I got ready to go out the door to school or to work or whatever. And so, like, here are the things that they would say to me. So my mom would say, "So remember, honey, the purpose of life is to love and be loved." And I'd say, "Oh, yes, Mom, I remember that. And I know that." And then she'd say, "But remember, in that order." Then the next day, my dad would say, "Remember, honey, to serve is to live." Well, thanks, Dad. I understand. I believe. Then the next day, one of them would say, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yep, I learned a lot that way. Thank you. Then my parents would say, remember, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Thanks, Mom. That's great. And then one of my favorites, Hamatsu, was they would say, now, by working together with others, you can make a most positive contribution to the most people around our world. Great. Love that. And then another one that I just loved was, remember, it's all about lifelong learning and continuous improvement. And respect everyone. We're all creatures of God and worthy to be loved. And another one was, work is love made visible. What you're doing is what you love, and you're making it visible. So work and love are the same thing to me. And then one of the ones that really led me to reflect continuously, Amatsu, was who you are as a person will significantly influence your leadership effectiveness going forward, honey. So you can imagine that in that environment, with those teachings, and then watching them live that way. My dad was an accountant, and then he worked for the United States Post Office, so he was serving every day. And my mother worked at the university. She's a teacher, and she also worked at the University of Kansas, which was in Lawrence, Kansas. So I had this window to the world and all the people that were there from all around the world. And so with that example, all of these lessons learned really came to life in a very meaningful way.
These are really very powerful lessons. At the cost of repeating, can I request to summarize one more time, because I don't want anything to be missed? The 4, 5.
Sorry.
Can I request you to just summarize one more time those 4, 5 powerful words that you got from your parent?
Oh, sure. So the first one was always, the purpose of life is to love and be loved.
Okay.
And also to do that in that order. It starts with loving, and then you're going to feel the love from others. To serve is to live. Now, does this sound like Francis Hasselbein and Marshall Goldsmith and Sarah MacArthur? I mean, all the leaders that we know that pull people together around compelling visions, this is where they're coming from. And then seek to understand before you seek to be understood. It means it's not about you, it's about starting with understanding others and where they are and what you can do to add value. And then the one that led to working together, so much that you know so well, is by working together with others, with talented people, you can make the most positive contribution to the most people around our world. And of course, the basis of all of this is, when you're leading with humility, love, and service, is lifelong learning and continuous improvement throughout your life.
Yeah. When I'm reflecting on these items, elements, I see like a spectrum. At the extreme end of the spectrum is core set of values. On the other set of spectrum is your habits. And between these two, the character is shaped. Yes or no?
Absolutely. And I would also add to that we'll talk a lot about this, is that when it comes to leadership and making a difference in service, you have, of course, all the competencies that you want to continue to develop through your life. But also what's really important are your behaviors and how you treat people and how you expect people to treat you. And that's where the working together principles and practices came from, because that's going to have more to do with your effectiveness as a leader than anything else. So absolutely.
I'm going to pick 2 for reflection and building on that. The first one is seek to understand before you are understood. I'm working with a CEO in Middle East, and in one of our conversations, he said, my direct reportees don't get me. They don't read my mind. I asked, have you ever told them that what is in your mind? He said, no, they should get it because they work every day with me. And just to build some humor, I said, does your wife get you whatever is in your mind? He said, no, not at all. I said, how do you expect the direct reportees to get if you don't communicate multiple times and repetitively? They won't get you. Such a simple thing that you learned.
That's really an important point, because as you live these principles and practices we're talking about, it'll come together with what you're committing your life to. So what is that compelling vision, which you want to share with everybody? You want to pull everybody together, have them be part of developing it. And then
Yeah.
once you've agreed to that vision, whether it's Boeing, your family, Ford, the community, whatever, then what is the comprehensive strategy for achieving it? And does everybody know that? So you're exactly right. Everybody needs to know what the vision and strategy is. And then that allows us relentless implementation in a positive way, where every week in your business plan review, your life plan review, whatever,
Yeah.
you're going over how are you doing implementing that strategy to deliver that compelling vision for the greater good.
Thank you. And the second thing which you made me remember from my life is I'm one of the youngest, and my elder brother was 21 years elder to me. So by the time I came to the world, the siblings had moved on and I was alone. So every time I would ask anything about anything in life, I would often get a response from my parents: figure out. You keep asking, figure out. I used to curse that they never tell me anything. They always ask me to figure out. But now I realize the power of figure out, because I personally feel that I can figure out anything anywhere in the world. That's the power of a programming. So thank you for making me remember that. So moving on, Alan, what shaped your thinking, beliefs, and assumptions by virtue of your interactions with the world? And which of these values have served you well? And was there any value that got contextualized or you had to reframe that?
Well, I clearly was influenced greatly by my parents, and not only who they were as people, because they were leading with humility, love, and service, but they were also supporting me to understand the value of those going forward. And so even though we had very modest means, I was just a real live person. I was somebody that, wanted to fit in. I wanted maybe a pair of Levi jeans and maybe some Weegian shoes, and maybe a car someday, and maybe get a chance to attend the University of Kansas, one of the best universities in the world, which was a window to the world that I was living with right there in Lawrence, Kansas. And so I started working. We're back to our work down, loving. Okay, so I had a TV guide routes. I had paper routes. I worked in the Dillon's grocery store as a bagger and then a checker. I worked in construction, in farming, in ranching. And then as I got older, applied my engineering and technical talents. And so, but from the very first, I just loved helping people and serving people, and the response I got was phenomenal. I mean, people are so appreciative of support and help, and then they would pay me for it for my work, for my love, and then I'll give you a good example about that. So the winters are a lot of snow in Kansas and very warm in the summer, and so when you're bagging groceries, you can go to a little extra work and put them in bags and protect them even more, and you carry it out for the customer. You put it in their car, and they usually give you a tip, which was fantastic. And so you can imagine what wonderful feedback that just showed me that these humility, love, and service are really, really valuable. And then Himanshu, they promoted me to be a checker. So I was in the checking line in the grocery store. And so the people would come through and I would check it. I always make sure they had what they were looking for and everything. And about half of the time, they would actually give me a tip, Himanshu. And I was a checker. And I'd say, why are you giving me a tip? He said, well, because you're making sure that we have a good experience here and that we accomplished what we were out to accomplish. And so again, this integration of work and love and service and what it meant was valuable for not only the customers, but for made so we could all move forward together and grow. It just shaped everything I did from then on, because I knew that not only did it sound good, but it really works. And you felt this unbelievable satisfaction of meaningful accomplishment supporting people.
In this wonderful story, when you said that you were promoted to the checker, I think the value of integrity was established because they found your integrity of the highest order. So it moved you up the rank. The excellence was perceived because they trusted you to do your job with absolute diligence.
Yep.
So, and customer centricity. So now I know, where does your working together system come from?
Well, Himanshu, that's exactly right. Because when we get to the working together management system, I was really well along in grade school, understanding that those principles and practices of people first and including everybody and coming together around a vision, strategy, and plan and working it together, identifying the greens and the yellows and the reds, the things that were opportunity, that were gems, but then also respecting each other and helping each other and supporting each other. Remember, as you pointed out, you have your values and you have your beliefs, but what people see are your behaviors, which reflect those. And so we always made those behaviors front and center of the principles and practices, because that's something that we could help people further develop. And what I found is, with this working together principles and practices, that if you're in that kind of a culture and that kind of a system, and those are the expected behaviors, then people will actually further develop their values and their beliefs in a positive way because of the effectiveness of those behaviors in working together.
People are a product of their experiences, but experiences also have a shelf life. That may be relevant in that context. So there is something called timely and something called timeless. And one has to keep evaluating what is the timeless component. Like in Tata's, there is a timeless component and there's a timely component that needs to be integrated. You talked about respect. I was working with one partner of a big four, and he said, Himanshu, tell me, how can I earn respect? It's a very obvious question. I said, I'll tell you a very simple thing, but I'm not sure you will be willing to do that. I said, the answer to this question is, to earn respect, you have to give respect in multiple ways, in a big way.
Absolutely.
And he looked at me as if I gave some very dumpster kind of answer, but then he got the essence. And then he asked, but what if others don't respect me, even if I continue to do that? I said, you got to build your intensity. Over a period of time, everything will change. So you always say you first do what you would want to do and then expect the results, which is Bhagavad Gita's essence of wisdom. And then he said, yeah, probably I never looked at that way.
Very good.
Thank you for sharing. I asked this question about shaping of reframing of beliefs. I often meet with people who obviously would have come from humble background, and maybe in India, in a lower middle class setup, the respect is coded in a very different way. One of the elements of respect out here, that you can't say anything to the elders. And these are the people who often struggle on the power and the art of saying no and be assertive. So then I had to work with them to reframe the understanding of respect. Anything on this from your life and experiences?
Well, that's absolutely a core value of the working together principles and practices, and that is that, and you wonder why, but when you have these principles and practices that are based on people first, because everything is going to be done, whether it's at Boeing or Ford in your community, whatever, it's going to be about people participating and working together. And I found, like you, clearly, that the more that you have a compelling vision and a strategy for achieving it and a relentless implementation plan, and it's based on inclusion and the appreciation of their diversity and their rich experiences, and they are needed and wanted and respected for their work, and you're sharing everything with them and appreciating them, even if something's not going well, you love them up even more. And so it's absolutely key, because you either believe in people and people first in everything you're going to do, or you don't, and you can't fool anybody. I've always, one of the things I've loved about the work of Marilyn Gist, which that you know of,
Yeah.
also that because I continue to teach with her at the Seattle University, which is a wonderful university. She's head of the MBA programs, and she described humility in a really neat way, to your point, and that is when you meet a leader, there are 3 questions that you have of a leader. First question is, who are you? Who are you really? Where are you on that humility, love, and service scale? And then the second question you want to know from the leader is, you're the leader, where are we going? I mean, I want to participate. I want to help. I have a choice whether I'm here or not. So where are we going? So then we're back to the vision, strategy, and plan, and share it all like we talked about. And then there's the third question. So, Mr. Leader, do you see me? Do you see me? Am I part of this? Am I wanted?
Am I included?
Am I included? Am I respected? Are you going to tell me when things need special attention in addition to when they're going well? And you know if you're respected and if you're needed, and you're not just a factor of production. You're never the problem. You're the answer. Wow. And so creating an environment that's safe and healthy, in addition to smart, is the absolute, probably the most important role that the leader can do, is to create that culture and that environment.
You know, you've spoken about this who am I multiple times, and I always say, be yourself, because everyone else has already been taken. You can't be Gandhi, Mandela, Marshall, Allen, or anyone else. You got to be yourself. And one can escape competition through authenticity. If you are authentic, no one can actually compete with you in your field and arena. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing this. Moving on, Alan, life is never hunky-dory. We all have some moments that may plant the seeds of self-doubt, low confidence, confusion. Were there ever moments in your life? And if they were, how did you deal and handle those moments?
Well, it's a really great question. And another principle that I was taught early on, and it was so useful, was expect the unexpected and expect to deal with it. Now, think about the power of that. A lot of people, they'll make a plan, and then things will change in the business environment, the people are participating, whatever, and they get frustrated, as opposed to appreciating the reality that whatever the strategy and the plan is, you're going to be running into things that will impact that or change it. So if you switch over to expecting the unexpected and expecting to deal with it, and you have your whole team doing the same thing, and that's where the yellows and the reds come from on each element of the plan. So that's why a red is not a problem. That means that we're off the plan. We're going to understand it. It's a gem. Thank you for sharing. And now we together are going to work to turn the red to yellows to green across the whole plan. So now with that background and where my mind is, I've never run into anything where it was a problem. It was a gem. And I'll give you a couple of them that you were asking about. So one thing, as I was growing up, I loved physics. I loved art. I loved working together. I loved creating value with others. And I remember that, and I loved engineering. And I remember when President Kennedy said we were going to go to the moon, and we were going to learn more about ourselves than space that'll have the greater good. And I thought, wow, Himachi, that's compelling. I want to do that. So I actually joined I continued to study in engineering. I joined the Air Force. I learned to fly. And then I found out that I had a color blindness. And at that time, to be an astronaut and go to the moon, the landings were going to be manual. And so it was really important that you could see all of the colors. And so you can imagine, on one hand, I was devastated because I'd focused my life on this. I was ready to serve. and I wouldn't be able to go on these initial missions. And so I decided to continue my work in graduate school, but that was a huge thing in my life. Now, on the other hand, because I went back to work on my master's, that's where I met Jan Roskam, who was from the Boeing company, who was head of aerodynamics, who took me underneath his wing as a researcher and doing work for a lot of the companies, Cessna and Boeing and Learjet, and also taking me to Seattle to meet all these fabulous engineers. And that's what led me to commercial airplanes. So on one hand, as Francis Hasselbein will say, when one door closes, if you're open and you're aware, as Marshall will say, then another door is going to open. And so it's always going to enable you to move forward if you deal with that in a positive way, because it's just the reality. It's not like you're good or bad or successful or not. It's that you're going to continue to take the things that you run into in your life and go from there in another positive direction.
We always have an idea of what we want to do, but the universe may have a different design. And I think the universe knows and understands better where do we fit in the larger scheme of universal things. And sometimes that really works out well. Narayan Murthy, who is the chairman of Infosys company, one of the largest software company, Murthy, he coined this term called chance encounter and intentional choices. So he was once thrown out from a train in Bulgaria and Sofia Express when he was very young because he could not communicate or the people misunderstood. And he coined the term that life is about chance encounters and intentional choices. And when I reflect on my journey, so I started as a geologist, then served in Indian Army for 21 years. I was a colonel in a tank regiment, then served in UN, then consulting, and then Tata's, and now as an entrepreneur. So one door closes and there are multiple doors. Maybe it's God's way of making sure that where you fit the best and where you create the greatest impact.
That's good. That's a really great lesson learned. You're very fortunate.
Thank you. Alan, all that happened with you, around you, what did you set out to become in future? You partly answered this question, but I want to reflect on that. What was the journey, and how did you deal with that structured transition from A to B? And people in the world could actually benefit from this answer when something does not happen right in their life. How did they reset and regroup to do something where they could create a big impact?
Well, I've always, back to the lifelong learning and the continuous improvement, I also have always included all of the stakeholders in my life. And all the jobs, all the love that I have contributed to would always involve stakeholders. So clearly the customers were really important. The suppliers are really important. The investors are important. All of the communities in which we operate, the businesses. And so I've always included, excuse me, all the stakeholders. Let me just have a little bit of water here.
Yeah.
And not only when things are going well, where they understand the plan, but also especially when there's a red item, a change. It's not on plan, wasn't what we expected. Excuse me. And I've always used my relationships with all those stakeholders to share what the real situation was. And of course, everybody knows because they're all around you, and then seek their advice and counsel. And it's amazing, to your point, when you're humble and you're seeking to understand, people will very thoughtfully help you out with their thoughts. And it's amazing what people have been through. And when you ask, and you're asking in a very authentic way, you get wonderful, wonderful support from all the people that you're working with. And so, and think about that with your family and every part of your life. When you're having an integrated life with your work and your family and your personal life, the more that everybody is working together and you're benefiting from everybody's experience, the more successful you're going to be.
In the previous answer, you spoke about expecting the unexpected. So in India, there are high Ladakh mountains, Leh Ladakh, which is 13,000 to above. It's a beautiful, picturesque terrain. And 2018, when I drove down, so on the border road, there are a lot of pillars. And one of the pillars, there was this quote. It said, real leaders expect the unexpected thing. And I could, when you were sharing, I was actually thinking of that point, which in many ways, it's like a beginner's mind. In my program, I often seed the idea of beginner's mind and encourage the healthy debate between beginners and expert mind. And the people who are on the expert, they often bring this argument, would you trust a surgeon as a beginner to perform surgery on you? And then the beginners will say, would you trust a surgeon who's going to apply the template of a previous patient on you? So, and then we conclude that I think in life, think like a beginner and deliver like an expert in all the times.
The only thing that I would add to that is expect the unexpected and expect to deal with it. Now, that's really an important part. You could expect the unexpected, but also it could devastate you. But what if your mindset is, I am going to expect the unexpected because things are going to change no matter what the plan is. We're going to run into issues, but I'm expecting that we, the team, including me, are going to deal with it in a positive way. And we're going to deal with the reality, not the way we wish it could be, we hope it could be, but what is our reality? What's changing in the world? What's changing on our plan? And then we're going to work together to turn the reds to yellows to green. See, that's why people always ask me, how do you sleep at night? I mean, you're the head of an airplane program. You're the leader of the 777. You're the CEO of Boeing or CEO of Ford. How do you sleep at night? And my answer is, I sleep really well, really well. I just had a business plan review. I just watched all the colors moving from green to yellow to red and back and forth. But it wasn't just me. It wasn't for me. Matsu, as you know, it was everybody on the team was watching that same data. And so now we're going to go to work together to turn the reds to yellows to green. And we can't look forward. We can't look forward enough to next week to see what the status is on all of that progress, including the new reds.
Let me share a very interesting incident from history. So I'm involved in a program which is called Lead Like Gandhi. And from the history, there is a very famous march which Gandhi did, Mahatma Gandhi. It's called Dandi March, to put a non-violent protest against British. He decided to move 100+ kilometers to a place to make salt. It's a very famous incident called Dandi March. So the day before the Dandi March, Gandhi was the only person who was sleeping. The rest, everybody were working and preparing for next day. And people asked Gandhi, how could you sleep so peacefully? And he said, oh, I had done everything that I could do. So there's nothing left for me. So in a way, you led like Gandhi, that you've done everything, you brief, you put things in place, so nothing else to do.
You know, it's really neat, a really neat story, because what he was doing was he took full responsibility for the culture of working together. And so if you're responsible for that and you have a process now, a system to do it that people can follow, and you've identified expected behaviors that you're expecting everybody, all the stakeholders, to participate that way with the things that we've talked about, well, you finish that business plan review and you've done everything you can because you've nurtured that environment, which is a safe environment in addition to a smart environment where all of the issues were brought forward. And boy, that's the biggest contribution you could ever make as a leader, just like you described.
I had a chance to work with a boss who had a very peculiar way of asking two sets of questions. He said, every time you come up with a situation, I want you to find or write down 10 times what if and 10 times what else. And he would say that if you can think of 10 times what if and 10 times what else, probably you would have catered for 20 scenarios.
Interesting.
And we realized that people don't ask questions. When they share, they need something. If you don't ask questions, the understanding does not happen.
Well, isn't that interesting? We're back to seek to understand before you seek to be
Yes.
understood.
Go on, please. Go on.
And that's not telling people what to do first. It's really understanding. And it's not about you again. It's about this culture that we all are going to try to understand before we move forward. That's why the facts and data are so important, and the color coding, because we always appreciate people's opinion, but we want to know what is the data they're looking at.
Yes.
Because if we have a red item, we want to know everything about that so that we can move forward with confidence, knowing we're working on the right issue. So you can imagine how neat that is to seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
And data reduces or eliminates the biases. It brings objectivity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can hold on to two sides of story without ever wondering about what the true data is. All right, so moving forward, you talk about agility, and you also talked about really leaders expect the unexpected. And you've been involved in many aircrafts, moving from one set of aircraft to another.
Yes.
How this model of expecting the unexpected served? I want to tap into something from Boeing experiences when you move from one set of aircraft to another. How did you go about it?
Well, for everybody that is sharing our journey here, I was very fortunate to be able to serve on the design of every Boeing commercial airplane. So the 707, the 727, I like to say them all because they're so fun. The 737, the 747, the 757, the 767, and then I was asked to serve as the chief engineer of the 777 airplane that gets all of us together, especially India and the United States. Long range, great point-to-point, nonstop, efficient, and safe. And then as a CEO, I helped launch the 787. And every one of those airplanes is an innovation, and they're the most sophisticated products in the world. As you know, they average around 4 million parts, and they go halfway around the world safely and efficiently. And so each one is an invention. And so you pull the team together, you agree on the vision for the airplane. Is it going to be short range, long range, point to point, nonstop? What's the strategy for designing it and achieving it? And not just the technical strategy, but what's the working together strategy? What's the partnership strategy? What's the finance strategy? What's the strategy to include all the airlines so you can include all their knowledge in the design? And then the next thing is, what's the plan for implementing it, the relentless implementation? And that's the business plan review. We have our strategy now, we have the plan, and every week we're going to meet in the business plan review, and every member of the team is going to share their strategy, their status, and the areas that need special attention. And you have everybody on the team, engineering, manufacturing, procurement, communications. So you can imagine that reliable process just got better and better and better through all those airplane programs, because it's all about lifelong learning and continuous improvement. And so in a way, the process was continuously improving, along with all the participants are all growing personally, technically wise, and working together wise, because they all have their own development plan, as well as all the products that you're making are continuously improving. So it's this integration of people working together, continuously improving the product, the process, and themselves.
Thank you. Yesterday, I was having a chat with a leader in Google Bay Area, and the lady asked, a lot of people have discussion about strategy. What is the simplest understanding of strategy that I can have? So I thought, I said, to me, strategy is like a car. C stands for choices, A stands for approach, R stands for roadmap. If you can think of the choices, approach, and roadmap, you'll be able to explain strategy to even a 5-year-old kid.
And you should be able to do that. And you should be able to do that. That's a really nice model.
So Alan, what's the secret of this trademark Alan smile? Where did you get this from? Because it always presents you in a very calm and composed manner.
Oh, you mean my airplane signature?
Yes.
Well, for everybody that's listening, I've over the years, after I joined Boeing, that I used to always sign everything that I did with my signature, Alan, and then I'd draw an airplane. And it has a circle, it has a vertical tail, and has the horizontal tail and the wings, and then two landing gears and two eyes of the pilots and a smiley face. And I can draw it in about 2 nanoseconds. And the way that came about is that one, it's a smiling airplane, which is delivering people around the world safely and efficiently. And the reason that that's so important, Himatsu, is that, and it goes back to the University of Kansas and growing up, I had access to all of these talented students that were coming from around the world. And they couldn't go home a lot of times on the holidays. So my parents would invite them over for dinner. And I couldn't get enough of meeting these students. And they were all different. They all had experiences that I hadn't had. And it was like my window to the world. And so when I was at Boeing and I was in engineering, I'll give you one example. I was presenting the 777 airplane to the chairman of China Southern Airlines in Guangzhou, China.
Yes.
And whenever I would finish my presentation on the airplane, then I would sit down, the contracts and the lawyers would take over to finish the negotiations. And I'd always draw my airplane, and then I would write the equations of motion around it, just to kind of enjoy my technical skills again. And so I finished my presentation and I sat down, I drew the airplane and I started to draw the equations of motion around it. And the chairman was sitting across the table. He stopped the meeting, he said, "Mr. Mulally, what is that that you're drawing?" And I said, "Oh, it's my airplane." And he said, "So what does that mean?" I said, "Well, we're committed to making the best airplanes in the world and to serve you." And he said, "Holy cow! Well, I knew you love what you're doing, but I didn't realize that this is all about serving us for the best airplanes in the world." So then he said, "So, Mr. Mulally, I would like you to sign the contract. It was $20 billion contract. I'd like you to sign it with your Alan and your airplane."
Yeah.
So I turned around to the contracts and the lawyers people and I said, "What do you guys think?" And he said, "Alan, or Miss Mulally, you can't sign a $20 billion contract with a doodle of an airplane." And so I turned around to the chairman of China Southern Airlines and I said, "So what do you think?" He said, "Well, I'm only going to buy these airplanes. This is the most important decision I'm ever going to make, are these airplanes, the future of our company and our country. And I want you to sign it." And so I turned to the lawyers. I said, "Well, what do you guys think now?" And they all said,
20 billion at stake.
"Yeah, we really love your airplane. Thank you." And everybody likes it because I smile a lot because I'm enjoying my work as love made visible, but also there's the airplane. When I joined Ford, Himatsu, they love that airplane. And I said, "Well, if you can think of a really simple car, I'll sign it like a car like that because I'm Ford now." And they kept putting bumpers on it and extra wind. I couldn't do it in 2 nanoseconds. So they finally said, "Well, someday we're going to have flying cars. So just sign it the same way. It looks like a flying car."
This story, while I've had the privilege of hearing from you, it reminds me of one line: people buy you first before they buy from you. And they can sense, they can see. I think the chairman of that company, they saw that you are putting your personal signature at stake. They said, "Let's go ahead."
Oh, how much of that is that I've not heard that said that eloquently, the way you just described. And let me tell you what that really, how right you are. When you buy a commercial airplane, it's the biggest decision somebody's going to make. And they're very expensive. They create a lot of value for everybody. And so they actually make progress payments, starting with when they sign the contract. And then by the time that the airplane delivers to them, they own the airplane completely. Well, can you imagine your whole company's career, its service is all on the line because of the airplane, but also, to your point, the people that are designing it. And do you trust them? Do you believe in them? Are they world-class at what they do? And so you're absolutely right. They are buying you and buying all your colleagues and all your suppliers and all your investors and themselves working together to create the very best airplanes in the world, which we do. So you're absolutely right. And I think that is one of the reasons that they love that signature, because that was me. That's what I'm dedicated to. That's what I believe in. And I'm here to serve you.
Yeah, in that episode, they could see your personal integrity, character, commitment, and passion, and most importantly, service. So, to wrap up this part of the conversation, I'm going to ask the question: what's a typical day in Alan's life?
Well, this is kind of a good example. It's talking to another leader that is helping people understand how to take their leadership to the next level of humility, love, and service. And so every few days, I meet with others like you who want to learn more about working together and who you are as a person, why you are the way you are, what you do, and then how you do it with the working together management system, which I'm sure that we're going to talk about more in the next session. And so I love working, support Google and Alphabet and the Mayo Clinic, which is a phenomenal institution, as you know, and some startup technology services like Carbon 3D, which is the first 3D printing company actually prints in 3D, not with layers, and also Blue Current, which is working on solid state batteries, which is going to be really important for the world for sustainability. And our family is growing rapidly. We just had a daughter, our daughter Amanda and her husband had a baby in Paris, France, and we just got back from get a chance to spend a week with our 3-week-old new granddaughter, and the grandkids are growing all around the world, and so the family is really important. And also, I continue to consult with leaders that, like CEOs, that are implementing the working together management system, which is really fun because once they start that BPR, that business plan review, which we'll be talking about every Thursday,
yes,
everything changes. Because to get there, they have to describe the vision, they have to describe the strategy for all of the participants, all the people that are sitting around that table worldwide, and the relentless implementation and what the status is. So it's really fun. And that's where Sarah MacArthur and Francis and Marshall and all my friends and colleagues, we really enjoy sharing that journey and that information to help others create value for the greater good.
Yeah. Each person we meet is worth 100 books in life. His or her life is so many chapters, and this idea of meeting people, learning from them is really phenomenal. I often say this quote: two things can change the course of life, the books that you read and the people that you meet. So that's one of the best ways to learn, spend time. So thank you, Alan, for this episode. We're going to build this conversation in the next, where we talk about working together management and many other things that you did at Ford.
That'll be really fun. I look forward to it. Nice job.
So friends, you just experienced a part of the journey of Alan in the episode 1, where you saw how he evolved from a young Alan to a business leader. In our next episode, we'll talk about how he led the transformation of two giant companies like Boeing and Ford Motors. So stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll meet soon.